The invisible funeral of love. Heartbreak is not just losing someone, it is losing the version of yourself that only existed when they were there. And maybe that's why letting go feels impossible. Because deep down, you are not mourning a person. You are mourning a future that will never happen. There's a strange silence that arrives after heartbreak. Not the silence of peace, but the silence of absence. The kind that echoes through ordinary moments. You wake up and instinctively reach for your phone before remembering there's no message waiting. You hear a song in a grocery store and suddenly your chest tightens like someone reopened a wound with invisible hands. Even the world itself begins to feel haunted. Cafes become memorials, streets become time machines. Certain hours of the night become dangerous territories. And the terrifying part is this: people expect you to move on while your inner world is still collapsing. So you smile. You say, "I'm okay," but inside, your mind keeps replaying memories like a prisoner trapped in a loop. You revisit conversations, you analyze mistakes, you wonder if they miss you too. You torture yourself with imaginary scenarios where things could have ended differently. Carl Jung once said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul." And heartbreak forces you to face it, because heartbreak is not only emotional pain, it is psychological withdrawal. Your brain reacts to lost love the same way it reacts to addiction. The person you loved became woven into your identity, and now your mind doesn't know how to exist without them. But here's the truth nobody tells you. Letting go is not forgetting them. It is learning how to survive without abandoning yourself. And tonight, we're going to walk through that darkness together. Part 1. Why your mind refuses to let go. Sometimes the hardest part of heartbreak isn't losing them. It's accepting that your mind has turned them into a myth. Have you ever noticed how, after heartbreak, your memory becomes selective? You don't remember the nights you cried yourself to sleep because they ignored you. You don't replay the moments you felt unwanted, small, or emotionally abandoned. Instead, your mind edits the story like a filmmaker obsessed with nostalgia. Suddenly, they become perfect. The relationship becomes sacred. And the pain becomes proof that it was meant to be. But psychologically, this is what the brain does when it loses emotional attachment. The human mind hates unfinished stories. That's why breakups feel so haunting. Death has finality, but heartbreak leaves questions. Could I have done more? Did they ever truly love me? What if I had said one different sentence? And those unanswered questions become emotional chains. Nietzsche once wrote, "Hope in reality is the worst of all evils because it prolongs the torments of man." That is exactly what heartbreak does. It feeds on hope, not always obvious hope. Sometimes it's hidden in tiny things. Checking their social media, rereading old messages, wondering if the universe will somehow bring them back. Your mind keeps bargaining with reality because accepting the truth feels like emotional death. And this is where most people become trapped. They confuse attachment with love. Real love wants freedom. Attachment wants possession. Love says, "I cherish your existence." Attachment says, "I cannot exist without you." That distinction changes everything. Because heartbreak often reveals wounds that existed long before the relationship began. Childhood abandonment, fear of rejection, the desperate need to feel chosen. Sometimes we don't miss the person, we miss who we became around them. We miss the validation, the certainty, the illusion that someone finally filled the emptiness inside us. But no human being can permanently heal an emptiness we refuse to confront ourselves, and that realization is brutal. It's why people stay emotionally attached to relationships that destroyed them, because familiarity feels safer than loneliness. Even pain can become addictive when it's connected to intimacy. The Buddha taught that attachment is the root of suffering, But what nobody explains is how terrifying detachment feels at first, because letting go means stepping into uncertainty. It means facing nights where no one texts you goodnight, mornings where nobody asks if you're okay. It means sitting alone with yourself, without distraction. And for many people, that silence becomes unbearable. The moment you stop chasing what left, you begin rediscovering what remained. To part 2, the dangerous comfort of emotional pain. Some people don't heal from heartbreak because their pain becomes the last connection they still have to the person they lost. There's a moment after every heartbreak that nobody prepares you for, not the crying, not the loneliness, not even the sleepless nights. It's the moment when the pain itself starts feeling comforting, because as strange as it sounds, suffering can become a form of attachment. Think about it. Why do people replay old voice notes they know will destroy them emotionally? Why do they revisit photos at 2 a.m. knowing it will reopen wounds? Why do they secretly stalk someone who has already moved on? Because pain creates the illusion of proximity. As long as you hurt, part of you believes the relationship is still alive somewhere inside you. And that is one of the most dangerous psychological traps of heartbreak. Your mind begins romanticizing suffering. You start identifying with your wounds. The sadness becomes your routine. Your grief becomes your identity. Slowly, without realizing it, you stop trying to heal because healing feels like betrayal. If you move on, what happens to the love you carried? That question silently terrifies millions of people, so they stay emotionally suspended between memory and reality. Camus once wrote, "In the midst of winter, I found there was, within me, an invincible summer." But heartbreak convinces you winter is all that exists. You begin measuring life through absence. Food tastes different, music feels heavier, even happiness feels suspicious, as if laughing means you didn't truly love them enough. And social media makes this infinitely worse. Today, heartbreak doesn't end when the relationship ends. Modern technology keeps emotional ghosts alive forever. One story, one photo, one accidental glimpse of them smiling without you, and suddenly your healing collapses again. The brain interprets emotional rejection similarly to physical pain. Neuroscientists discovered that heartbreak activates the same neural pathways as addiction withdrawal. That's why people obsess after breakups. You are not simply dramatic. Your brain is literally craving emotional dopamine from someone who no longer provides it. And yet society tells people to just move on, as if grief obeys logic. But healing is not linear. Some nights you'll feel free. Other nights you'll miss them so intensely it feels like drowning. Both experiences are part of recovery. The real danger is when sadness becomes familiar enough to feel safe, because humans can adapt to almost anything, even suffering. There are people who stay emotionally loyal to relationships that ended years ago, not because love remained, but because pain became part of their identity. They no longer know who they are without the heartbreak, and this is where transformation must begin. You have to ask yourself a terrifying question. Am I grieving the person? Or am I afraid to meet the version of myself that exists without them? Because eventually, every broken heart arrives at a crossroads. One path leads toward endless nostalgia. The other leads toward rebirth. But rebirth demands something painful. You must stop worshipping your wounds. You must stop treating your suffering like proof of love. Because love is not measured by how long you bleed after someone leaves. Sometimes the deepest act of love is finally allowing yourself to heal. Part 3. Why letting go feels like losing yourself. The cruelest thing about heartbreak is this. By the time someone leaves your life, parts of your identity have already wrapped themselves around their existence. Heartbreak is rarely just about another person. It's about the life your mind built around them. The future you imagined, the routines you unconsciously created, the emotional dependency you didn't even notice forming. That's why certain places suddenly feel empty after a breakup. A coffee shop becomes unbearable. A late-night drive feels haunted. Even ordinary songs begin carrying emotional weight like sacred relics from another lifetime. Because love changes the architecture of the mind, psychologists call this self-expansion theory. When we deeply love someone, our identity slowly merges with theirs. Their dreams become tied to our dreams. Their happiness affects our nervous system. Their presence becomes emotionally integrated into our daily existence. And when they leave, your mind experiences it almost like an amputation. This is why heartbreak can make people feel physically exhausted. You're not simply sad. Your entire internal world is restructuring itself. The future your brain emotionally prepared for suddenly disappears. And now your mind must rewrite reality without the person it planned around. And that process feels terrifying. Carl Jung believed that every emotional crisis carries the potential for transformation. But transformation first requires collapse. That's the part nobody wants, because collapse feels humiliating. You stop recognizing yourself. You lose motivation. You question your worth. You wonder why someone who once promised forever could suddenly become a stranger. And beneath all of it lies the most painful fear of all. If they stopped loving me, was I ever enough? That question destroys people quietly, not because of the breakup itself, but because heartbreak often awakens old insecurities buried deep within the subconscious. Rejection has a way of reopening childhood wounds people thought they had already healed. Suddenly, the abandoned child inside you begins speaking again. See, everyone eventually leaves. And when that voice takes over, heartbreak becomes more than emotional pain. It becomes existential. You begin doubting your value, your attractiveness, your future, your ability to ever trust again. But here's what most people fail to realize. The relationship was never your entire identity. It only occupied too much emotional space inside it. There is still a version of you untouched by this loss, a version that existed before them, a version still waiting beneath the grief. But to rediscover that self, you must survive the uncomfortable emptiness that comes after heartbreak. And most people avoid this stage at all costs. They rush into distractions, rebounds, endless scrolling, temporary pleasures, anything to avoid being alone with themselves, because silence after heartbreak is revealing. It exposes how much of your happiness depended on external validation. The philosopher Lao Tzu once wrote, "When I let go of what I am, I become what I might be." And maybe that's the hidden purpose of heartbreak. Not to destroy you, but to separate you from the identity that was built entirely around someone else. Because real healing begins the moment you stop asking, "How do I get them back?" and start asking, "Who am I becoming through this pain?" That question changes everything, because heartbreak, painful as it is, can either turn you bitter or turn you conscious. Part 4. The Art of Letting Go and Becoming Free Again. One day, without realizing it, you will speak their name for the last time with pain attached to it, and that is the moment your freedom begins. Letting go is not a single decision. It is 1,000 small decisions made quietly over time. It's choosing not to check their profile even when loneliness tempts you. It's resisting the urge to romanticize memories that once destroyed your peace. It's waking up each morning and slowly teaching your nervous system that survival is still possible without them. And at first, this process feels unnatural, because heartbreak changes your inner chemistry. Your body became accustomed to their presence, their texts, their voice, their attention. When they disappear, your nervous system panics. This is why healing often feels less like moving on and more like learning how to breathe underwater. But slowly, something begins changing. The memories stop stabbing as deeply. The silence becomes softer. You laugh without guilt again. Music sounds beautiful instead of painful, and one morning you realize they no longer occupy every corner of your mind. Not because you stopped caring, but because you finally started caring about yourself too. That is the hidden wisdom inside heartbreak. It forces you to rebuild your relationship with yourself. For years, philosophers have spoken about this transformation. The Stoics believed suffering reveals the difference between what we control and what we do not. You cannot control who stays. You cannot force someone to love you the way you deserve. You cannot rewrite the past, no matter how many nights you replay it in your head, but you can control whether heartbreak becomes your prison or your awakening. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." And strength after heartbreak does not look dramatic. Sometimes strength is simply getting out of bed when sadness tells you not to. Sometimes strength is deleting the message you wanted to send. Sometimes strength is allowing yourself to cry instead of pretending you're unaffected. Because true healing is not emotional numbness. It is emotional acceptance. The deepest mistake people make after heartbreak is believing they must erase the past completely. But healing does not mean forgetting. Some people will always remain emotionally significant to you. Certain memories will always carry softness. Certain songs may still ache years later, and that's okay. A healed heart does not become cold, it becomes wiser. You begin understanding that love was never meant to guarantee permanence. Some people enter your life to stay forever. Others arrive only to teach you something about yourself. And often, heartbreak becomes the greatest teacher of all. It teaches boundaries, self-respect, emotional awareness, the difference between loneliness and genuine connection, the danger of abandoning yourself just to keep someone else. Most importantly, it teaches impermanence. Everything changes. People change, feelings change, life changes. The Buddha taught that suffering comes from resisting this truth. We try desperately to hold on to moments, people, identities, and versions of life that were never meant to last forever. But peace begins the moment you stop gripping so tightly, because letting go is not losing love. It is releasing your need to control what was never fully yours to keep. And maybe that's the final lesson heartbreak leaves behind. Sometimes losing someone is not the end of your story. Sometimes it is the beginning of your return to yourself. So if you are hurting right now, if nights still feel heavy, if memories still follow you like shadows, understand this. You are not broken because you loved deeply. The pain you feel is proof that your heart was brave enough to attach, to hope, to dream. And although heartbreak may have shattered the version of life you once imagined, it also opened the door to a new version of yourself you have not met yet. One day, this pain will become wisdom. One day, this ending will make sense. And one day, you will look back at the person you were during this heartbreak and thank them for surviving it. Because healing is not becoming someone new. It is remembering who you were before the world convinced you your worth depended on being chosen by someone else. And perhaps true freedom begins here, the moment you finally realize that losing another person should never mean losing yourself.